Hello, welcome to Chapter 3 Podcast, the show for readers of science fiction, fantasy, and romance. This is Season 2, Episode 27. Today, we are discussing The Trouble with Peace by Joe Abercrombie. This is our second to last installment of this year-long read-along. We've come so far.
The only thing to do when you finish is to start at the beginning again.
Or start a new series. Should we tell people what we're planning for next year?
Well, sure. I think you can't not tell them now that you've said that.
Now that I've said that, yeah. So for anybody interested, in 2023, Leanna and I are planning a Witcher read-along. So if you want to join us for that, it will be fun.
This will also be me rereading something and Bethany reading it for the first time.
Even more so, actually. It's tradition. Yeah, I mean, because that I've only read the first short story collection. I haven't read anything else, so. But it should be fun. So join us in 2023. But first, we need to finish the first Law series. And this was great.
I was going to ask before we started recording, but then I was like, I'll just ask when we start recording. Right. What did you rate it?
I rated this 5 stars.
It's better than A Little Hatred.
It was better than A Little Hatred.
And A Little Hatred was great.
And A Little Hatred was pretty great. Yeah. I mean, this was very
So when
good.
I said that A Little Hatred, all y'all who are blown away by it, this is the weakest one. Was I kidding? Did I oversell it?
Thus far, I would say you were correct. I gave A Little Hatred 4.5. I gave this 5.
So when I say that last year, I was like, well, he can't beat A Trouble with Peace. I'm sure Wisdom of Crowds will be good, but like be realistic. And then I read Wisdom of Crowds, and I was like, how is this better than The Trouble with Peace? That's stupid. It shouldn't be that good. It has no business being that good.
I am very excited to find out next month. But yeah, no, this was great. Really, I didn't have any complaints. It was fun. It was good.
It was a decade full of knuckles. I didn't have any complaints, therefore it was good. Nothing to praise either, but
no, I mean no. I mean, there are certainly things to praise, but it it was entertaining. A lot of things happened.
Are we gonna this is what we did. We haven't done the trilogy now in a while, but I think what we were doing before was that completely non-spoiler, then spoiler series so far, like that would include A Little Hatred spoilers and then full spoilers for the book, is what we did before.
Okay, sure, we can try to do that.
Just sort of like ease into the fullness of the spoiling.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So like if someone has read A Little Hatred, then they can be spoiled for like, that far, and then full spoilers.
Fair enough. So, and you've read this now 3 times?
Yeah, because with the new series, since I was a reader when they were coming out, unlike with the old First Law books, they were already out when I discovered them, so I could just read them at my own pace. But for these books, since I was reading them as they came out, so I read A Little Hatred, and then I reread A Little Hatred before Trouble with Peace, and then I reread A Little Hatred and The Trouble with Peace for Wisdom of Crowds. So like each one is read one more time than the one that comes after it.
Okay, that makes
so like
sense.
Wisdom of Crowds. When we get to that next month, that will be my first time rereading it.
Okay, exciting.
So maybe I'll reread it and be like, oh, it's actually not as good as it was the first time.
That seems unlikely.
It does. But it's possible.
It's possible.
I've had my opinion go up on some books on reread, so it stands to reason it could also go down.
That's true. It could happen. Yeah, no, this was like, man, what to say that is not spoilery about this book?
I don't know if you like in vague terms, why is this better than A Little Hatred?
That's a great question. I don't know. I enjoyed it more.
I mean, I don't know that. So throwing some multiple choice options for you. It could be the pacing. It could be it focused more on characters that you like better. It could be that like some things were paid off that weren't paid off before, so you just like the satisfaction of that, or none of the above. Fill in your answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I think A Little Hatred was good. I had a couple of minor things that I quibbled with on it, I guess, and this I didn't. I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed both of them. I think I
You gave
just
A Little Hatred 5 stars too?
4.5.
So on Goodreads,
So
5.
on Goodreads, 5. I rounded up, yeah. So it was like, I mean, it was just like slightly. Like I had
And
some
then
like
Trouble with
minor.
Peace was just a no
Right.
asterisks, no rounding, full 5.
Right. It was like a full 5. But
Wisdom of Crowds
also
getting 6.
maybe, because for anyone who doesn't know, because I give 6 to something that's like a favorite of the year. So this wasn't like favorite book I've read this year status, but I was like, this was very good. I don't have any
Well, get
complaints.
ready.
We'll see. We'll see. I also do think that his books in general are often for me greater than the sum of their parts too, where like even if individual, because I think this is how I feel about the original trilogy, is that even though I didn't rate the individual books all 5 stars or whatever, that as a whole I think it's a fantastic trilogy.
Yeah, my old First Love video, that's just me like generally gushing about it. Which had happened to be a successful video, and I was just like, I don't know, I just want to talk about this, and here we go. I did say in that video that like, okay, so he's good at banter, he's good at world building, he's good at characters. Like I listed a bunch of things he's good at, and I was like, okay, and like, is he better at any of those individual things than every single other author? Like, no, he's got some people that I would say are like equally good as. So that I'm like, why is this altogether then like blows everything else out of the water for me? And I'm like, because it's more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
Because like it's the way that he combines all of those things in a way that is brilliant.
Yeah. Okay, I just realized I might have sort of an answer for you for your question of like a thing that I enjoyed more about this. This had fewer battle scenes.
I mean, we're getting into spoilers, but I would argue this has more because the first one didn't have any.
No, but it does. Well, I guess.
Well, I guess the first one. No, the first one does have one, but
it has. But it also has. Okay. It loosely interpreting battle scenes, I guess, like
or
extended
maybe
action sequences is maybe a better way to put it. This had less extended action sequences, which are just not my favorite. They're fine.
But I wouldn't say it's a lot less. Like I would like if I actually went and like did the numbers, I think you're right that A Little Hatred would come out as having more, but it's not like wildly more.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot in Trouble with Peace.
Yeah, maybe
for a book about peace, right?
Fair enough. Maybe I just enjoyed the action sequences in this book more than I did the ones in A Little Hatred. That could also be possible, that I was like more interested in them.
I did promise you, and you can tell me if I overstated the matter, that throughout the First Law books, he does this thing of flipping perspectives and jumping perspectives. Like, and again, that sounds like every book, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then how like in this trilogy, he does like the Olympic version of that twice.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think, because I don't know that in this book it stood out to me. Like I'm trying to remember.
We'll just circle back during spoilers, and I'll be like, remember this part?
Yeah, no, you're gonna have to, because I probably was aware, but I think whatever it was in this one didn't stand out to me as much as like some other installments of that have. Well, but yeah, he is.
A previous installment was romance centric, and I think that's why you clocked.
That's probably why. I mean, you are probably correct. I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing here. Yeah, that is very likely the case.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't romance centric here.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, man, a lot happened in this. I kind of came out of this book really disliking Leo.
I feel like it's almost like the reverse Giselle arc, where you start by really hating Giselle, and then you're like, you know what? He's not that bad. And here you're like, Leo, he's like not the best, but like he's all right.
And now I'm like, you're like, no, dude, no, you sort of suck. I don't like you.
But even then, because it's Abercrombie's writing him, even then, it's not like a cookie cutter, you're evil, I hate you now. Like, no. When you're in his head, you're like, I mean, I get why you think what you think.
My God,
and
he's
like,
just so frustrating.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, just like, you idiot.
Well, I also think he's kind of a good comparison to Giselle, which is funny because the comparison that I make in my spoilery review of Trouble with Peace from when like I first read it and I was like fresh off of it, I was comparing him to a different character, but I can't tell you why until we get to spoilers. But for him being like Giselle, I think I've said before that I think the reason when people read First Law that they so aggressively dislike Giselle, even though like technically speaking, he's the least harmful, least offensive character. Like the other ones are torturers and berserkers and murderers, and
Right.
Giselle's just kind of a twat. And everyone's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I hate Giselle," and you're like, I mean, he hasn't done anything. Like he's just kind of an ass.
Yeah.
And I think Leo, he's kind of like that as well. Where like he's once again the character that like his like the things you hate about him, it's like you know that guy. Like I don't know a torturer, I don't know like these other kinds of characters, but I know that guy who's like so sure he's right and kind of narrow-minded
Oh my
and but
God.
like also kind of lovable. So you like don't totally hate him, but
Yeah.
you're just like ah. That's why you
Yeah.
like feel more viscerally like
Yeah.
hatred towards it because you're like, no, I've met this, I've encountered this, I have been IRL frustrated with this. I can't like leap to a memory about a torturer and be like, I feel, oh, this is bringing back so many memories about my time in the torture chamber. Like it doesn't, it's not happened to me. So I'm just like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're exactly right because he is so irritating, but in a way that you've seen other people be. And I'm like, oh my God, you're just
And
going to
it's
ruin
not
everything.
evil, which is why you're just like,
No,
ah.
no, it's not evil, but it is very
You
frustrating.
just want to smack them.
Yes, exactly. You want to smack some sense into.
Which, in fairness, we have a character that is around him a great deal, which is spoilery to say who, that feels exactly the same way about him. So
Yeah. Yeah. hmm Yeah. So that was definitely a shift in this book.
well, I think also, I mean, it's partially that he just does more frustrating things, but also in the first book, the person that you see that you're comparing Leo with more is Stour Nightfall. Like those are the two that are juxtaposed, and obviously between Leo and Stour, like you're like, well, Leo. But in this book, it's Leo and Orso that are being juxtaposed
Yeah.
and compared, and
Yeah.
you're like, well, in that matchup, Orso,
Obviously Orso. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Accurate. There is there's a wedding.
There is indeed a wedding. This was the wedding episode.
Yes. Oh man, I love Savine.
I know. I was wondering. I mean, in general, I mean, I don't think that you're gonna. I wasn't expecting you to like. Oh, I can't wait for you to read more because you're not gonna like Savine later. Like, I think. I mean, she's a well-written character that you're gonna continue to like,
she's a great
even though she
character.
does unlikable things.
But
I wanted to know how you like. Not that you would stop liking her, but that how your feelings about her would change reading this book.
No, I love Savine. I think she's like I understand her, I guess, and I like her. I also think, we talked about in A Little Hatred how he does a really great job of depicting menstruation with Savine, and then in this book he does a really great job of depicting pregnancy with Savine. And like I know you don't have personal experience with that. I do. And I was like, yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that like whenever I've brought it up to you or to people in general who haven't read the books, I'm like, well, Abercrombie's really good at like women's bodily things because like the fact that she's pregnant is kind of spoilery.
No.
So like I don't usually like say that
Okay.
is what it is, but I'll be like, yeah, and he does women's ness in a way that you don't usually see. So it's just the fact that it's there is already like you already won. And then what he actually wrote is also like I think I said in my spoilery review for Trouble with Peace back when I first read it, I was like, I think he's a bigger expert on being pregnant than I am. And like neither of us has been pregnant. He and I share that. We have that in common.
But he's been married to somebody who's been pregnant.
And, yeah, I was reading it. I was like, I think you know what it's like to be pregnant better than me. And I have the equipment for it. You don't?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was definitely one of those things where I was like, yes.
Which is like what I interviewed him. I asked him, I was like, so did you like, did you Google it? Did you just ask your wife? Like, what did you do to like write that? And that's when he was like, I don't think it's rocket science. You just kind of like, the science, I mean, the actual like bodily function, you look it up, like what happens. And then you're like, well, what would that feel like? And then he just wrote that. And you're like, I mean, when you put it like that, yeah, it really shouldn't be rocket science, but you would be surprised.
Yeah. I think it's done in a way that's funny too, but like funny like you're in on the joke, not funny like
Well, I mean,
mocking.
he handles it pretty much the exact same way he handles men talking about
Mhm.
their equipment,
Yep.
which is also kind of funny and not flattering.
Yeah. Which I just really appreciate. You know what I think you know what's funny to me is that this is random, but I finished reading this right before I went to New York Comic Con, and I went to a panel on, it was a dual panel, so one of the shows I had to sit through even though I haven't actually seen it, but they did Wheel of Time and then they did, Rings of Power, which I was mostly there for the Rings
I've
of Power
seen
one.
both, and I like neither.
Well, anyway, it was just interesting to me because they showed this whole extended clip from Wheel of Time of this, like, very pregnant woman fighting all these dudes and then, like, giving birth on a bat, and I was like,
Everyone
"This."
has ripped that scene to shreds, just so
Oh my
you
god.
know.
Okay, so I had never seen it before, and I was like, "This is absurd," and in my head, I was comparing it to The Trouble with Peace because I was like, "This is not how you do
Well,
pregnancy in
I
a
feel like that
fantasy
scene
book."
from, not that this is what this podcast is about, but
Mhm.
briefly, that scene you're talking about from Wheel of Time is like the
Yeah.
perfect example of like, okay, strong female character
But
doesn't mean this.
no. No. I was like, "This is absurd." Like, it's not that, like, pregnant women can't do things, like, they can, but it I mean.
As Joe Abercrombie would write, you have to be
Right.
realistic.
Yeah. And it's not like Savine doesn't do physical things while pregnant, but, like,
Although she often thinks to herself, maybe I shouldn't be doing
maybe
this
I
because this
shouldn't be
is
doing
not super
this,
comfortable.
which honestly is, like, relatable because I was also the person who would be pregnant and be like, "I'm gonna do all of the things even though
And
I'm
then she's like,
pregnant."
probably shouldn't.
I'm like, "Maybe this was a bad idea, but I'm doing it anyway." I mean,
Yeah.
like, it's relatable, but yeah, but so in my head because I had just read this, that was what was in my head when I saw this scene in the panel, and I was like, "Oh, no. No, no, no. What is this?" Yeah. Props to Abercrombie for
Which, like, I guess in a future world, if Amazon ever adapted First Law and did that to this part
Oh.
of this book,
Oh, no.
which they could,
They
I would
could.
riot.
Uh, yeah. But I do think part of what is done so well is with this, you're in her head, and so you also have and that is, I think, what Abercrombie does really well, which I think would be hard to translate to screen, honestly, is like, the dichotomy sometimes with certain characters, especially with, like, Savine, with Glokta, of, like, the dichotomy between, like, the internal dialogue and what they're doing externally. I mean, maybe you could figure out a way to do it,
I
but
mean, that's why people thought Dune was unadaptable, but we just saw that
mhm,
it's very adaptable if you have the right
yeah.
person doing it. So,
Yeah.
like, you'd have to work around that or build some of those thoughts into speech, or
Right.
you could break the fourth wall. And I feel like that has a very high odds of being stupid, but the right like showrunner could break the fourth wall and make it work.
Potentially. Yeah.
Like with Glokta specifically, I could feel
Mm.
like he would like kind of like House of Cards, you know, when like what's his name? Kevin Spacey? Is he in House of
Have I seen House of Cards? No, I
Oh,
have
I
not,
just
but
feel like
I
everyone
kinda
has. Or at least you know that he does break the fourth wall in that
I
show.
I've heard it.
Yeah, so it's a very serious political show, but then like because there's like
Right.
political machinations and he's a liar, you know, and he's a schemer, so then he does break the fourth wall and like let the audience in on like what he's thinking and what he's plotting. So like if you did something like that with Glokta,
Yeah,
you couldn't do that with every character because then that would get ridiculous, but
right. Also, you know, you should know by now that to assume that I've seen anything is, usually not gonna work out.
I should. There's just so many that I'm like, even if I haven't seen
Mm,
it, you know, like I
yeah.
just know because like
I
I
mean, I
haven't watched
know.
Breaking Bad. I watched like one
Right.
episode of Breaking Bad, but I know a lot of people reference stuff that happens in it. I
Yeah.
like know about it.
I mean, I know a little bit about House of Cards, like, I know vaguely, like, what it's about and who is in it and stuff like so, I mean, like, I know a bit about it, but yeah, I have never saw it, so, um Okay, so do we have any other spoiler-free things? I mean, I guess the pregnancy thing is, like, semi-spoilery, but also, I don't know.
I don't know, because like I'm coming into this too, like knowing wisdom of crowds. So I like am also very like I don't want to say anything even in the
Mm,
spoilery section that
mhm.
is like what do you think about this part? I mean, I have thoughts that are tainted by what I know. So like what do you think about this part? What do you think
Right.
is gonna happen?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But I mean, I guess it's not super spoilery to say this. I guess in the spoilery section we'll get into the specifics of why, but I told you before, and I say it all the time, that while my favorite character remains Glocta, followed by Shivers, the
Mhm,
character I most personally relate to, the way that you're like, oh, I relate to Savine, I relate to Orso so
mhm,
extremely. And especially like in this book. Like in the first book, like if I had been asked, do I relate to any of these characters? And if so, which one? I would have been like, I guess Orso. But it
mhm.
was this book, reading this Trouble with Peace, that like in the review for this book, I was like, I am Orso and Orso is me. I feel so seen by this book.
Tell me more about that.
So like, well, let's get into spoilers then, shall we?
Okay, let's do it.
Officially. All
Yeah,
right, guys,
okay.
spoiler time.
Spoiler time.
In the way that like the person who is incapable of doing something if it has zero stakes and it doesn't matter. And so people are like, if you can't handle little things, then how could we ever trust you to handle big things?
Mm,
And that's the thing, because if it's a big thing, all right, let's do it. I'm here for this. Pressure, bring it on. I'm calm. Let's take care of it. So, like, the way that he's kind of just like sarcastic and is like, I know I should care about stuff. I probably should take care of that. Probably should. I just it just stresses me out to think about it. I just won't. Let's have a drink instead and be sarcastic about the state of the world. And then,
mhm.
war, battle, you have to make a decision. And he's like,
Right,
all right, let's do this. Time to make decisions. Time to take action. And I was like,
right.
yes, this is my life. I mean, obviously, I've never been to
Oh,
war,
man.
thank God. But
Mhm,
like, similar things of like high pressure situations where you can't think about it. You have to make snap judgments. And like, it was obviously like he's in his 30s, I think,
mhm,
at this point. And it was a little earlier in my life that I had my first instance of like something happening. And obviously it wasn't war, but something that would like force me to just like, be in a quote unquote crisis situation where like I can't dither. I can't think
mhm.
about it. I have to like take action and handle it. And like realizing that about myself at that time when I was like, I had thought my whole life that I'm just not good at life and that I should not be trusted to handle any kind of responsibility. And then realizing that like, oh, I shouldn't be trusted to handle small things because I will not do it. But if you have a crisis, I could probably handle it.
I mean, honestly, I feel like that tracks. That is probably, like, how I would feel about you, like, being friends with you. So, like, that's I can totally see that. Like, I feel like you would be a good person in a crisis because I feel like you would be, like, on top of things and calm, but, like, minor tasks, like, I
So
don't
like,
feel
I
like I
mean,
would, like, assign a
yeah.
bunch of stuff to
It's
you.
not like a big secret or anything, but like basically like the moment in my life that I would say like I had the realization that I can handle a crisis is when I was driving from Northern California to Southern California like overnight. So it was like evening into night.
Mhm.
And I was by myself and I totaled my car on the 5 and I was by myself.
Oh, wow.
And it was like in the part of the stretch of the 5 that's just like 2 lanes in the middle of nowhere. It's just grassy hills
Whew.
and my car was completely totaled. And I was fine with it. Like, I mean, obviously, I wasn't fine with it. My car has been totaled. Like, that's a pain in the ass. But like, I was like, okay. So like, then the cops came and the tow truck came, and I called the insurance and I let my parents know because that's who I was driving to see that like I'm not going to be there tonight because I totaled my car. So and I like got a hotel room in a nearby town and had to rent a car the next morning and like I was like, yeah, I just took care of it. And my mom was like, oh my God, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I've called this person. I've called this person. I took care of this. This is what I'm going to do. I should probably be able to get to you by noon tomorrow. If I'm able to get the rental car, like by the next morning. And she was like, are you sure? Are you okay? Should we drive up there to meet you? I was like, there's no point. Like, I mean, what are you going to do? My car is totaled. Can you
Mhm.
untotal it? No. So like, what are you going to do when you get here? So she was just like, I don't understand how you're so calm right now. And I was like, well, there's nothing I can do about this. Like, all I can do is do the next step.
Yeah.
And I find that very relaxing. I'm like, I don't have to make really, like, there's not this, like, the pressure of choice and indecision or whatever, and like, no, I mean, I guess later on I felt like bragging about it, but in the moment, like the tow truck guy and the cops were like, "You're taking this really well. Like, you're really fine with this, right?" It's kind of weird that you're so calm right now. And I was like, "Is it? Like, I don't know why I would be freaking out right now, because what benefit would that serve? Like, there would be no points to that."
Mhm.
So like afterwards, when so many people were like, "You're really calm about this," I was like, I it didn't occur to me that that's weird until a bunch of people said so. And it was
Yeah.
after that then that I was like, okay, well, a crisis is fine. But if you ask me to decide on a little thing and then also take care of that little thing, I'll be like, uh, maybe.
Oh, man. That's so interesting. Yeah, meanwhile, you're right. Like, I relate a lot to Savine, honestly. I'm like, "Yep." Like, I understand you. Yep. So,
So that's why we're friends, I think.
that's why we're friends.
Orso and Savine, they get along famously.
Yeah. Thankfully, we're not siblings.
Well, if you ever get trapped in a city under siege, then if you paid for the army that I now have, I'll come in and rescue you.
Fantastic. I will keep that in mind. Oh, man. Yeah, the Savine Orso thing is so interesting in this book because Savine's pregnant, that's a problem, so they decide to marry her off to Leo, which
Which I love them getting ambushed by the moms, first Savine and then Leo.
yeah.
When Leo was like, I mean, it feels like, you've already like prepared the wedding and invited the guests. And then he pauses, you have prepared the wedding and invited the guests. And they're like, well, there was already a wedding happening, so we're just gonna
Why
piggyback
not?
on
Let's
that.
just like pushy mothers.
The two of them just like colluding is so adorable.
It's so
Artie and
funny.
Finri.
Yeah, that's great.
Also, that too, and Leo is like, when they tell him that Savine is pregnant, and he's like, "How?" and Artie's like, "Well, I thought by now you'd know, but okay, let me explain." And he's like, "No, I understand that."
Like,
When a boy loves a girl.
Oh, man. And then they have this fraught relationship where he's like, "Yes, please hit me. That's gonna work out for me." And he has so much internalized homophobia,
He does.
which causes so many problems.
It does.
Oh my god.
I mean, I was thinking about that today, having reread it, how basically this book, obviously the what makes the situation at all possible is the existing political and economic strife and situation. But like the deciding factors that like determine what happens to the entireties of nations is down to like these interpersonal relationships. Like the fact that Savine is even on Leo's side right now is just down to what happened between her and Orso.
Yeah.
It's this like very personal thing that happened, and if that hadn't happened, then basically the entire rebellion probably wouldn't have been successful.
Yep.
And the same thing that like it's just because Leo's homophobic about his best bud that his best bud, who also is like Savine and has a good head on his shoulders, isn't there at his side during the battle. And it's like a really minute, specific interpersonal thing that like completely changes the outcome of events.
Yep. Well, and it's also that the internalized homophobia is also what changes the way he interacts with, I don't remember the dude's name, like the guy he goes to that him and Orso both go to see.
Japo?
Yes,
Yeah.
Japo.
I was gonna bring that up also just separately because like I love them going to see Japo so much.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, all of the but I think the scenes are so interesting. And I think with like it's kind of masterfully done, honestly, like contrasting.
It's kind of masterfully done. How dare.
Okay, it is masterfully done. No, but the contrasting of those scenes, because you've got Leo who is, because he's so uncomfortable with his own sexuality and recognizing it, when he sees Japo being, effeminate or whatever, he's like freaked out and is like, I'm not going to do what I'm supposed to do with this. And that really affects things. Whereas Orso is just like, yeah, dude, sorry, I don't swing that way. Like, it's just like no big deal, as opposed to being like, I'm so offended. It's like, okay, well, why are you so offended?
Well,
Because
I mean,
you're,
we saw this in A Little Hatred, and I commented on it when we talked about it. But in this scene, you really see it again, and Jappo puts words to it again. The idea that everyone thinks when they're going to meet Leo and Orso, I'm going to like Leo and I'm going to hate Orso, because Orso's the prince that sleeps around and is
right.
useless, and Leo is like the hero who's like the guy who's so virtuous. And you meet them in A Little Hatred too. People are like, they meet Orso and they're like, you're all right, and he's like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I got a bad reputation. It's not a high bar.
Yeah.
And Jappo, once again, he's like, when I was gonna meet you and Leo, I thought I'd like Leo and hate you, but you're all right.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
like, I wish the whole nation could meet Orso and realize that
Right.
he's all right. Leo's
Yeah.
an ass.
But also, I mean, I think that kind of goes with what always happens in all the books in this series, of that, like, people's reputations and what is said of them is so rarely reality.
Sometimes it's spot on though.
Yeah. It is kind of sad for Savine by the end, because she's like, what did I do? Why did I do this?
She has a sort of come to Jesus, like,
Mhm.
I recognized that I was not in a stable emotional place when I
Mhm.
made decisions.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
I was on a lot of drugs. I was pregnant.
Yeah. I was angry and hurt, and oops. What did I do?
Well, to be like full spoilers, and I mean, we don't have to talk about the book in order, but to skip to the end for a second. I had to wait a year to find out what Orso is thinking. Because at the end of the book, you don't get another Orso chapter. You have no idea what he's thinking. And I was like, ah. So I don't know if that bothers you. I mean, you don't have to wait a year like I did, but
Yeah, so I probably am not bothered, because I am
but
going
if you
to
had
be
to wait a
reading this.
year to
Yeah,
know what
yeah.
he's thinking,
Sure, yeah.
would you not feel
Yeah.
like,
It's
what's he
mhm.
thinking? He just
Mhm.
learned something really important. What does he think about that?
Yes.
All I have to go on is the fact that he didn't kill Leo, but I also don't know what that means
Right.
necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I am really curious to see where the 3rd book is gonna go. Um, yeah, because there's a lot going on. There's
Oh,
still
I should have gone back to watch our first episode, or our episode on the first book, because I asked you for predictions,
You
and I'd be
did,
like,
yeah.
how do you feel you did on your predictions?
I don't not maybe not go
Or
well,
even
I
if,
don't know. I'm still not sure what's gonna happen in book 3, because
well,
so much
sure.
happened in this book, so I don't
But
really know.
I guess going into The Trouble with Peace, like, not
Yeah.
it's hard to remember what you think when you already know something, but like, I guess when you were reading it, did you find yourself going, "This is not what I expected," or were you like, "Yeah, this is yeah"? I mean, I'm surprised by things along the way, but I'm like, "This is kind of yeah, this is where," or were you like, "Whoa, this is not what I expected to happen in this book"?
Yeah, I think I was expecting to see more political revolution happening in the middle book, which there's, like, some plotting that goes
There
on.
was actually more of that in the first book.
Yeah, there was. So I think I was expecting more, because I think my prediction was sort of that by the end of the trilogy, we might be moving to a different governance
You
system.
suggested capitalism, at least a
Yeah.
facade of one.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Which I think is still possible. I just think that we have a lot of ground to cover in a last book, if that's what's gonna happen. Could Abercrombie pull it off? Maybe. But I'm less certain that that is where we're headed,
Well, then where
given
do you think we're headed if not there?
I I don't know. I mean, I still think that that would be a good ending. I'm just not sure.
Well, since we're in like as full of spoilers as we possibly can
Mhm.
be, the other big thing at the end of the book is another piece of information that is shared with not just another character, but with the reader.
Remind me, it's been like a week and a half
We
since I read
learn
this.
we learn who the Weaver is.
Oh, right. Okay, but like, I think I remember, but also it's been a week and a half, and I was like,
It's Pike.
busy.
Pike goes to Vic and is like, so, how do you feel about things? You want to be on our
Right.
team?
That's right. That's right.
And she's like, are you asking me as a test? And I'm screwed if I say yes? Are you asking me genuinely? And I'm screwed if I say no?
I don't know what Vic is going to do. Like, Vic is kind of a wild card because
But did you at all suspect that the Weaver would be Pike?
no.
Glocta's right-hand man.
Yeah, no. I 100% did not expect
And
that.
Glocta's no longer in charge. It's
No.
just Pike. Acting Arch-Lector.
Right. Which is interesting. So, I mean, we could, like, especially if he is intended to be, because, I mean, like, obviously part of this seems inspired by, like, the French Revolution and
Oh,
stuff.
100%. I mean, I think they used cover art for the UK edition that is a painting of the French Revolution for the Wisdom of Crowds.
Well, so then the question would be, like, what if Pike is intended to be sort of a stand-in for, like, Robespierre, and then book 3, we get, like, I don't know. So who knows? I mean, maybe my suggestion is correct, and that is where we're gonna end up. That would be interesting.
And of course, Pike is, a nobleman that Glocta sent to the camps in the very beginning of the first law. And
Yeah.
what an arc we've had with that character that
Yeah.
you thought was insignificant when he got shipped off to England in the
Ooh.
beginning of the Blade itself.
Yeah, no kidding.
He's this like, soft, rich dude who's like, I'm your friend, and like, oh no, and you're torturing me, and then now he's the stuff of nightmares.
Man, you just really never know. And like I said, Vic is such a wild card because she's really in things for herself. But it's
Which
like,
Glocta praises her for. He's like, hey,
right.
so I'm not your boss anymore, so I just thought I'd give you a little pep talk before I go.
Yeah. Yeah, but so then that becomes the question, is it's sort of all based on who she thinks is more likely to win.
Or, I mean, at that point, in the moment, it doesn't matter who's going to win. Her boss is on this side, or he's testing her. Like, again, when she asks her that, and she's like, why are you asking me how I feel about the breakers?
Yeah.
Is it a test, or is it invitation?
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, we have had some interesting moments with Pike through these books before you find that out. Like in the first book, Leo wants to grant mercy to the breakers. And he's like, we should like, let's forgive and forget and give everybody food and move on. And he wakes up the next morning and Pike has hanged everybody.
Yeah.
And he's like, what?
Yeah.
And then when they're questioning somebody in the cells, Vic is questioning them. And then Pike comes in, is like, I'll take over from here, because she was like, who's the Weaver? Tell me who the Weaver is. And Pike's like, I'll take it from here.
Right.
And sends her out of the room.
That is really interesting. Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because both of those were moments where I was like, that's strange. But I mean, it definitely puts a different spin on it if he's actually, like doing things intentionally because he wants this rebellion to succeed or whatever.
But then, because after he's done those things, then there's this like brief scene in the battle in Trouble with Peace where that boy like tries to desert, and they catch him and bring him back, and you're just like, well, Pike's gonna kill him, and Pike's like, are you gonna stay this time? Okay, then back to your post. And Vic's like staring at me, he's like, what? And she's like, nothing. I thought you'd kill him.
Yeah.
So it's another one of those, it's almost like a Kaz Brekker moment, when people believe you're a monster, you needn't waste time doing every monstrous thing.
As long as nobody knows, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very interested to see the direction book 3
It's just like throughout the
take.
books, you're like, Pike's the guy. You're like, okay, yeah, that was kind of interesting that he ended up being who he was by the end of the first Law trilogy, that he sort of came back. And then here, yeah, he's working with Glocta and he's around. And then when you find out at the end of Trouble with Peace that he's the Weaver, then when you reread A Little Hatred and Trouble with Peace, suddenly he's so much more interesting. He's not just like, oh yeah, that guy that works for Glocta. You're like, oh yeah, you said that and you did that and you were here for this and you suddenly so much more interesting.
Yes. I do think it's interesting. The queen kind of gets a happy ending.
Well, this series isn't over yet.
That's true. But she gets
Whoa.
a
Yeah.
happy middle, at least.
I didn't really think about that too much until this time around, because when we talked about Little Hatred, that was one of the peak things you were concerned about, is that she would, get to be with her girlfriend again. And I was like, I never cared or worried about that. But this time around, when that scene happened, I was like, Bethany will be happy.
I was like, oh, yay.
I just enjoy the interaction of Orso and his sister about how they deal with mom and how they talk about mom and their different strategies for handling mom.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I guess that's probably interesting with us reading this together, because like I generally am more interested in the relationships between people, and so like
For romantic relationships.
I mean
'Cause, I mean, the whole
relationships in
book is
general,
about
but yeah, the
relationships
romance, but
between people.
right, which is also interesting. But yeah, the romantic relationships are always interesting to me. So I do probably.
There's so little of that in these books.
I know, but bits and pieces.
But I mean, that's another example. I mean, like Orso, like it's not like he's laboring under any delusions about his parents. Like he, not only do they not love each other, he's fully aware that his mom's into women. Like,
yeah, which is so interesting.
Hey mom, I got your girlfriend back for you. Go be happy. Leave me alone, please. Go live with my sister for a bit. She can. Oh, I've had enough of you.
Like, good for you, Orso. Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Which, yeah, I mean, that conversation with him and Japo is just, it's just so fun. It's just so enjoyable.
Yeah. So then I guess the other major player in this book is it Rika? Rika.
Which again, like when I first read this, I mean, you can tell me how you felt, but I was so impressed that over and over again, Abercrombie tricked me, where she'd be in a vision and didn't know she's in a vision. And then you're going along in this scene and you're like, what? And then she's like, this hasn't happened yet. And like, after he's done it a couple of times, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to clock it now. Nope. He does it again. And I'm like, damn it, I didn't know that she was in a vision. He does it again. I'm like, damn it, I didn't know she was in a vision. You keep doing it and I keep not catching it. How am I still fooled?
That's really funny because and I don't know if part of it because I was listening to the audiobook, but I was like, I get it. Like, we're going to keep going through time until she eventually catches up back to like where she actually is. Because that's kind of what happens.
But he
like,
flips back and forth too, because she did come back to the present and like have a normal interaction. And then later on, then she's also, it seems like it could be what happens next after that. And then she's like, no, this hasn't happened yet. And you're like, and then suddenly there are kids again. And I'm like, wait, hang on. She's like, no, this already happened. And I'm like, yeah, I'm on to you.
Well, I thought that was interesting. I thought it was really effective too, of like showing like how chaotic things were for her.
I mean, for a guy that doesn't write magic very much, I think he's good at writing it when he does, where it feels like I feel like a lot of times people get really flowery about it and you're like, it felt untouchable, unattainable. You use like big flowery language to describe magic and you're like, okay, I guess it's magic. But he does it in a way where like you really get, like, you can understand the experience that this character is going through.
Yeah. I think that was definitely the case with Rika. I did think that was really effective for giving us the feel for like what it was like for her
to be as disoriented as she is.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought that worked out really well.
And I mean, in the scene when she's getting her runes, like the full chaos of like seeing like when she hears Shivers and Isern talking to her while she's getting it sewn on, even then you're like, does she hear them right now? Or is that part of the chaos of visions that she's having right now? Or like that whole thing. It's so well done.
It was, well, and like the experience of getting it done seemed so awful as well. And then I think it's so funny how after all of that, you know, from what we know, she probably doesn't actually have visions much anymore, but she acts like she does.
Well, she looks more like she would.
She looks like right. Like, so it's interesting. So she can play the part and she'll tell people, she'll like use that as a way to get people to do what she wants. Which
she's finally learned the lessons that the first book they were trying to teach her, that like, okay, just because you have the visions, that doesn't mean that you have to say what you see exactly. You get to choose what you share and how you share it. So like, it's not like I think Isern is the one that's like, you know, you you're more in control than you seem to want to let yourself be like, oh, I'm at the whim of my visions. But it's just like, you're not, though.
Right.
When they're like, it's not my fault, it was in the vision. No, it is your fault. You told him the vision, which that was
Right.
your choice. And she's like, I guess I do have more power than I realized. And she's like fully on board with that now. She's like, I've seen it.
Yeah. And she's like, if I have to look like this, I'm going to make some good use of it.
Well, she's taking a page out of Uncle Shiver's book.
Yeah. Yep.
You got it, flaunt it.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I think she understands too, right? Because like she was never afraid of him, even though everybody else was. But I think she
Which
now
is
is
so
like,
sweet when like they're worried about her, and Shivers is like, when he does his little like introspection moment of like, how people said I brought you back, but you're the one that brought me back. That like you brought me back to my humanity. And she's like, oh, you're just Uncle Shivers.
Yeah.
It's so cute. I just like love that trio.
I know.
Aunt Discern and Uncle Shivers and Tricky Ricka.
Yep.
Love that little family unit.
It's cute. Yeah. Whew. Yeah. So a lot happened in this book, and I am excited to see where it's going to go next. We'll see.
Also, how much do we love the description of the appearance of Jappo?
I don't. Remind me.
Jappo, or Orso is surprised when he meets Jappo that he doesn't look like he would have imagined a Styrian to look. In fact, he looks a bit more like a Northman.
Huh.
He's Monza's son.
Oh.
And I think Monza used to keep company with a Northman.
Oh. Interesting.
It's Shiver's son!
It's Shiver's son. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Interesting. It's everybody's children in the books.
Indeed.
Huh. I don't think I caught that. Okay.
And I mean, it's funny also having Orso and Jappo bond over having mothers like Therese and Monza, who, it would be, in some respects, similar growing up under those
honestly, yes. Yes. Well, and I guess what's interesting about it, right, is that Leo also has this really intense mother. But does he bond with Jappo? No, because of his homophobia.
But he does bond with his domineering wife.
He does. True, because she reminds him of his mother.
Which is because, like, with Orso, I don't really get that feeling that he likes Savine because she reminds him of his mother.
No. I mean, I do think that, like, having the mother he has, he likes intense women.
Or he's used to it.
Right.
Like, I don't know, like, not that he likes it because his mom's that way. It's just that you've been around it, then you don't have the idea that women should be.
Right, he doesn't think that women shouldn't be that way.
Which is weird because Leo does kind of think that, or he wants to think that. He can't quite because he seems to like Ricka and his mother and Savine, but he's determined to have a worldview in which men are in charge and fight battles and women don't. And as long as you just kind of like couch it in those terms, then you can lead him by the nose as long as he feels like he's doing the lead. I think there's a line from Savine where she's like, oh, and he can be happy about doing something active and breaking something, and that'll make him happy. Well, I take care of actual war.
I mean, I think Leo is a great example of like toxic masculinity at work, I mean, and the way that interplays with misogyny and how much of that has more to do with his own insecurities about himself and his sexuality and his masculinity and what he believes about it more than anything else. So, yeah. I mean, this is why I like Abercrombie. I mean, this is why I like a lot of why I think I love this book so much. And like the further I get into Abercrombie's work, the better I think he gets with the way he's writing female characters, the nuance with which he's depicting men of various sorts and some of the problems that we get. I'm like, go Abercrombie. Like, honestly,
to me, like,
it's great.
It just feels like he did the default to start out with, because he was just like, what if I flipped the traditional fantasy arc on its head? So it's very traditional archetypes, just reversed. And so everybody's a dude, and that's just kind of a very traditional fantasy world that he's just made the Dark Mirror version. And then as he's written, he himself has like wanted to explore different things and like
Yeah.
explore different character types and different people that like weren't the default. Because he's like, I mean, when he talked about the First Law trilogy, he was like, yeah, I mean, if you don't like think too much about it, you kind of accidentally have an entirely male cast, because you just, if you're not planning not to, you're just like, okay, well, have this warrior, and the warrior talks to the smith, that's a dude, and the smith talks to the baker, that's a dude, and he talks to his son, and that's a dude, and then he talks to the governor, and that's a dude, and you just kind of like, everybody is just ends up being a dude by default when you just like do this traditional fantasy type thing.
Yeah.
And that he was like, well, that's boring for the writer too. So, to like stretch your legs a bit and to like to do different things, different perspectives, different storytelling types. I mean, with the standalones too, he was like, well, I want to try to write a thriller. I want to try to write a war book. I want to try to write a Western, like try to do different things.
Yeah.
Because he always approaches it with nuance. It's just that like, okay, can I take this nuance and like take it somewhere else? To do
like,
it,
try different stuff. I mean, yeah, which I think is great.
Which is why when people get upset about the like women's bodies, depictions in these books, I'm like, he's literally taking his mindset about writing a man and his junk and being like, okay, let me just like come over here and just do the exact same thing, but with different equipment. So like he's not really different. He's just like, I will take my approach next door to a different set of circumstances.
Well, and honestly, I feel like people who get upset about that says more about them than it does about his writing.
But also it seems, it always, to me, it tells me that like if they claim to love the First Law, then I don't think they get the First Law. And I think they are the butt of Abercrombie's joke without knowing it. Because if they're reading it and being like, it's a stabby, grim book where everything's violent and we love it because it's just, that. It's so metal. And I'm like, Abercrombie's laughing at you. And you don't know it.
Yeah. Well, it does make me wonder. I should go read some other reviews. It does make me wonder, like, how many other people pick up on the fact that Leo's whole deal is his internalized homophobia. Like, is that a thing that people realize?
Or certainly one of his many deals.
Well, one of
his the deals. Only thing, but
he's
got a lot of issues.
He does. Fair, true, but like that's a big, at least in The Trouble with Peas, like that is a big factor.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's got like issues about living up to his, father, filling his father's shoes, and the mother that did always kind of take control, so he didn't really have to be tested. And it's kind of like Orso and Leo, neither of them really had to be tested, and now they were both put in the fire, and one of them was floundering and not knowing what he's doing because he has no one to tell him what to do, and the other one is like, oh, I'm actually good at this.
Yeah.
Too little, too late, but I'm actually good at this.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm excited to finish it out.
Oh yeah, but the scenes where we got the perspective hopping.
Oh yeah.
There were two. We did it at the Solar Society demonstration where there's an explosion. Before the explosion happens, we head hop for like all the different perspectives that are there, and each perspective ends with like it's like the guy saying, and now we're about to like reveal it, and then
I do remember that. Yeah. I know. I remember that one.
And then during the battle, we do something like that where like as the battle is kind of like a Rube Goldberg machine, where like we go from a perspective that affects this new perspective, so then they take it from here, and then this person gets affected by it, so then they take it from here, and we like cycle through the whole battle that way.
Yep.
I was like, oh damn, Shivers and Monzo walked so that this could run.
Yes. I do remember both of those things. And honestly, I think that is probably part of why I was less annoyed with some of the action sequences.
He was clever about how he
was more clever about the way he was structuring them. Yeah. No, he's very good at some of that kind of stuff. So yeah, this was good. It was fun. And I love how I was like, I read this a while ago. I don't know if I'm going to have much to say, but look at that. I had plenty. Yeah. So we're going to do On My Radar, sharing recent or upcoming book releases in sci-fi, fantasy, and romance that I'm excited about because I think it's just me this time, which is fine. Books for today's episode will be released between October 18th and October 31st, 2022. But if you enjoy the podcast, we appreciate if you take a minute to rate and review us so we can continue to reach more listeners. And if you're interested in getting early access to episodes as well as as well as exclusive bonus content with every episode, consider supporting us on Patreon. And thank you to all of our patrons. Your support helps fund the costs, like operating costs for what we do. So we do appreciate that. Okay, so October 18th, we have Paris Dalincourt is About to Crumble by Alexis Hall. This is a new some kind of queer contemporary romance involving a baking show. And I like Alexis Hall's stuff. It's always entertaining and well executed. So I'm looking forward to that. Also, I guess this is not a technically sci-fi fan. But I think when I put this together, I didn't realize that because I hadn't started it yet. But Lavender House by Love A.C. Rosen is actually more of a historical murder mystery type of thing, but with like all queer characters. I think I thought it was more horror-ish, which it's not, but it is good. I am enjoying it. Then October 25th, we've got Into the Wind-Racked Wilds by Deborah Baker, aka Shauna McGuire. This is the third installment in her very meta spin-off series from Middle Game. Basically, like in Middle Game, there is a character who writes children's books and named A. Deborah Baker. And so these are the series of children's books from her other book that she's been writing.
I mean, it's kind of what J.K. Rowling did when she published like the school books that
Yeah.
they're supposedly reading.
Yes, but better. No, but yeah, it's kind of like they're whimsical and kind of fun. So we've got that. And then Into the Riverlands by Nevo is the third novella in the Singing Hills cycle. And it's delightful if you've been into those. There's some fun Asian-inspired fantasy novellas. And then lastly, we have The Atlas Paradox by Olivia Blake, which I'm very excited for. Yeah, that's a sequel to The Atlas 6, which was excellent. And
Mara hates it.
I'm not surprised. I
was surprised that I liked it.
I'm so happy that you liked it.
That I liked it. She was like expecting to rant with me about it. I was like, oh, I liked that.
That's so funny. I'm not surprised. I like because I also think Mara would hate like Secret History. So yeah, but I love it. It's great. So all of those things are coming out. Everything will be linked in the show notes or in the video description if you're watching us on YouTube. And we will be back in 2 weeks, possibly to talk about Rings of Power. That's tentatively the plan. So stay tuned. And this has been Chapter 3 Podcast. We're your hosts, Bethany and Liene. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Chapter 3 Podcast. And you can find us on our individual YouTube channels. The next episode will be available in 2 weeks. And this episode's bonus content will be available to patrons in the next few days. Thanks for listening.